In today's episode, which doing on some new gear, testing out some stuff here, Cleetus asks, should I teach my kids to code? This has been a popular question over the past year as more people have learned about the power and some of the potential drawbacks of artificial intelligence. One of the things that I say in some of my talks is either you will manage the machines, and machines will manage you. Those will be the two fundamental careers. And the next logical leap in people's minds is, okay, so if I want the best for my kids, should I have them learn to code? The short answer, well, there is no short answer, and I'll preface this by saying I am in no way a parenting expert. Coding is a mindset. Coding, the ability to write code well, is a mindset that you have an aptitude for. And certainly, like any skill, any human being, if a human being can do it, any human being can develop a minimal level of competence. I could, for example, build a minimum level of competence in basketball. Right? I could learn to pass the ball. I could learn to dribble. I could learn to operate the ball in a competent way. But at 5'3", I'm not playing in the NBA, right? there's just, that's not happening. And so people who are taller and more athletically inclined, they will be able to take their natural aptitude and take it further. Coding is no different. Coding is writing code requires a lot of attention to detail, and it requires you to be able to think in very linear ways, in ways that have a sequence of things that need to happen. If your kid, for example, loves to build with toys like Legos, and they like to build the model exactly as it says in the description. You pick up the manual, and some kids are like, when I was a kid, I just like say, I got bored halfway through, and started making different things with the Legos and not following the directions. And as a result, I'm a very creative coder, but I'm not a very good coder. It's not something that I have an aptitude for in the same way that a serious developer or engineer can sit down and just crank through 8, 10, 12 hours worth of code and be refreshed at the end of it rather than tired. These are the folks who would sit up all night writing a piece of code just to solve a particular problem. Because software engineering is a form of engineering, you need to have that mindset, that ability to work in very strict patterns and replicate those patterns, but also still be creative in the sense of creating a new pattern that is just as orderly and just as effective. So I would say that you should see if your children have the aptitude for writing code. One of the best resources to test this in a coding environment is an MIT language called Scratch. If you go to scratch.mit.edu, you can actually see this environment. It's a drag and drop environment, and it's a lot of fun because it doesn't have coding's traditional, very rigorous requirements for, like, don't put, if you forget the semicolon at the end of the line, the entire thing breaks. Because it's a visual language, there's no writing of actual syntax until later. In the beginning, though, you start out just dragging and dropping lots of colored blocks together and creating algorithms, creating code patterns visually. Now, here's the funny thing. Coding is evolving to this sort of environment for a couple reasons. Number one, it's faster. Number two, it is less mistake prone because you're not worried as much about the syntax. You're worried more about the architecture of it. And we're seeing systems and people creating coding environments. They're called low-code or no-code environments, where you're doing that for production code. IBM Watson Studio, for example, uses this environment for its SPSS modeler and for its neural network modeler for writing and building artificial intelligence neural networks. As long as you know what each block does and the right order in which to use them, you don't need to be writing the underlying code unless there are specific customizations you want to make later. And so teaching your kids how to be familiar with that environment and seeing if they have an aptitude for that environment, I think is valuable, but forcing them to learn code and saying this is the career path that you must take is not the way to go. Another thing to consider on that front is as these low-code and no-code environments become more popular and more prevalent, coding itself is very much, it's a high-tech blue-collar job in a lot of ways, in the sense that it is very repetitive, it is very labor-intensive, and it is something that, obviously, with visual and low-code environments, companies are trying to eliminate. Companies are trying to automate. When you think about these code blocks, you are basically rewriting the same thing over and over again. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to put them in blocks. And so teaching your kids how to think about system architectures, about how systems work, there is value in there. Teaching them which order to put, the brackets on in an expression, maybe not as valuable. So give thought to that when you're teaching them about the type of outcome that you're looking for. You want them to be able to think system-wise, think architecturally, to be able to plan, to be able to manage, to be able to orchestrate various resources. That's where you want your kids to go. That's where what skills you want your kids to have if they have an aptitude for that. And by the way, and now this is where we get into completely unsolicited advice, they may not have that aptitude, in which case find the aptitudes they do have, find the things that they are good at. For some people it is athleticism, for some people it's music, for some people it's art. There's no wrong answer as long as they're happy doing it. Because artificial intelligence will change the workforce and change the nature of work so much that trying to time your kids' careers, especially if you have like a 5, 10, or 15-year horizon, is impossible. You think timing the stock market's impossible. Timing the way technology is going to change is really impossible. So instead, focus on what makes them really, really happy and what they will be the best in the world at, hopefully, or really, really good at anyways. And that will, in the long run, probably serve them best. So, should you teach your kids to code? Maybe. Should you teach them to think architecturally and develop some minimum competence? Probably. Should you force them down that path? Not unless they want to. Great question. Complicated question. There's a lot to unpack in there. So, keep in mind, this is just one person's opinion about the way the technology is going. As always, please leave comments if you have additional comments or questions in the comment section, and subscribe to the newsletter and the YouTube channel. I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Want help solving your company's data, analytics, and digital marketing problems? Visit trustinsights.ai today and let us know how we can help you.